Okay, I think we're ready for our last candidate forum for the 25th State Senate District, Bob Duff and Ellie Kasudis. And if you guys will unmic yourselves, unmute yourselves, I'll help you do that.
Yes, please.
Me too.
Okay, Mr. Duff is unmuted.
Ms.
Ms. Kasudis? Have I got that pronunciation right?
Kusidis.
Kusidis.
Thank you, I screwed that up too.
I'll try to get it right. All right, same rules as usual. 2 minutes for each answer, 30 seconds for rebuttal or extension, 2-minute close. By luck of the draw, it looks like Ms. Kusidis has the first question first, and I'm going to go with, what do you think will be the worst challenges facing Connecticut in the next 2 years, and how should the legislature address them?
All right, thank you for the opportunity to answer that question, and thank you for hosting this debate. As an educator, obviously for me, the very first thing I think about are what the needs of our children are. I'm an educator, so I'm still working every day with children, and I see how difficult it is for some families to actually engage online, even with the services that we are providing as a school. The level of engagement in online education is not the same as it is in person. And I have a fear that many of our children are really missing out. And as we all know, education is the key ingredient and one of the prime determining factors in life outcomes for children. And so I think that's an area where we're going to really need to do a lot of work. One thing that I've been paying attention to is in Pennsylvania, there's a Republican bill going through the Senate right now, which allocated some of the CARES funding to for families to have vouchers. And excuse me?
Oh, Mr. Sims' mic went live. Please ignore that.
Oh, sorry about that.
All right, I get to say reclaiming my time. I've been wanting to use that in political opportunity. So, you know, I really like the voucher system that they're trying to pass, which will give families opportunity to choose academic and enrichment support for their children. I think any opportunity that we have to empower parents to make those choices for their children is paramount. And now in COVID times, I think it's really a highlighted issue that we need to focus on. So I would say education is key, and providing opportunities to parents to make some decisions for their children is paramount. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Duff.
Well, thank you, and good evening, everybody. Thanks to the League for hosting this debate and for hanging in there for a long evening. So I think the answer for me would be to make sure that we, over the next year or so, we get through the COVID pandemic and do it in a way that we keep people healthy and safe, and that we let science lead the way. It's going to be very important for us as we go through the next so many months or a year that we continue to be guided by the principles of science and healthcare and keeping people safe. And the reason why that's important is Connecticut has one of the lowest rates of infection in the entire country. We've been smart about working as a state, working together, working as residents and government together to ensure the health and safety of the people we serve. And the reason why, again, that's important is because we've been able to then reopen our state in a way that has allowed for 85% of our state to reopen. We've had a 95% recovery. And the fact that we want to continue to do that. We're not like other states where we have then reopened in a rush. We then had a huge amount of reinfections. We then had to close down again. We had been very responsible. And now that we're seeing upticks again because of the cold weather, we're seeing upticks again because of, I think, a little bit of fatigue that's going on, that we need to make sure that we continue to work together. Again, let science lead the way. Let's make sure people are healthy, keep businesses open to the best extent that we can, and ensure that we're doing everything possible to keep people healthy throughout this pandemic.
Okay, anything further, Ms. Kusidis?
Yes, I would just like to say that I would have very much liked to see that the people of Connecticut had some representation in the legislature. I think Governor Lamont initially took the reins and, helped get things in Connecticut settled down quickly when we didn't really know much about the pandemic. But as we started to learn more about the virus, I think that the legislature should have convened and been part of that decision so that the people would have had a voice in the process. I also would like to say that, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, that was time. She held up.
Oh, okay, I didn't see it, so I saw you nod, but all right.
I apologize. All right, Mr. Duff, do you want to say anything further on this?
Yeah, I would just say that I do believe that Governor Lamont has been doing a good job on the COVID response. As a legislative leader, been in constant contact with him and his office, his staff. Legislators have also been in part of key decisions by having committee meetings and others. So from a standpoint of, has everybody been involved? Has everybody had information? Have we been working together cohesively in a bipartisan way? I would say that is the case.
Okay, thank you both. The next question goes to Mr. Duff first. And it's the one on Connecticut's educational system. How do you think we solve the problem of two Connecticut's, which serves high-income students well, but is failing many low-income students?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important questions we could be asking at a debate like this on education. That has been a passion of mine since I got into the legislature. And just to remind folks that, not only as a state senator, but as a dad with kids in the public schools, as a realtor in town, I feel very much of one of the strongest advocates for our schools, and also as a product of the Norwalk Public Schools and a former long-term substitute teacher. When a few years ago, I helped to rewrite the education cost sharing formula that has a 10-year phase-in. I would have preferred 5, but we made a budget agreement with the Republicans when we had our bipartisan budget that actually helps to bring money to our urban areas. The reason why that is the case, and it brings much more money into Norwalk, is because it finally funds poverty, it finally funds concentrated poverty, English language learners, and brings down the property value percentage so that more money will go to places like Norwalk. We have a lot of school districts in Connecticut that have declining populations. Norwalk and most of our urban areas actually have accelerating and increasing school populations, which is why it's really important for us to make sure that we are working on our education cost sharing, and why I was very, very proud when we had our bipartisan budget to be the person in the room that said, if we don't have a new education cost sharing formula, we're not getting a budget. And so that helped bring everybody to the table. I also say that it's important to make sure that kids have good infrastructure and that we're doing everything we can to support our teachers, which is why I was very proud to help shepherd through the new Norwalk High School, help shepherd through money for Jefferson School, for Ponus Ridge Middle School, the new Oxford School in Darien, windows and other infrastructure for West Rock School. So all those things are very, very important for our kids and ensuring that they get a high quality education, because if you don't have that education, you won't have the skills to meet the high demand jobs here in the state of Connecticut.
Okay, thank you. Same question to Ms. Casides.
All right, so I think that my opponent is pushing forced regionalization, and I think that forcing school districts to regionalize without considering the unique needs is not a smart way to manage education for children in the state of Connecticut. Ask any educator and they will tell you that more central office is not the answer to improving student outcomes. I've said it before and I'll say it again, the last thing schools need is more top-down bureaucracy. It's the teachers, the parents, and the local school leaders who know what's best to help students thrive. The conversations we should be having about education is how to empower parents to make important decisions for their own children. I would love to see something like the Pennsylvania bill move through the Connecticut legislature that would allow just that, would allow parents to make these decisions. I also think the focus can't always be just about money, and especially right now, bricks and mortar are not the thing that children need. Children need connection. There's actually a vast body of research through the Centers for Disease Control that show that the connection with just one adult can have a significant impact on the legacy of a child. So it's not always about money. A lot of it has to do with our focus. There are actually schools that are are known as the 90-90-90 schools, which are 90% eligible for free and reduced lunch, 90% minority, and 90% of the student populations meet or the high academic standards according to independently conducted research. So I don't think it's always about money. And I would like to add about recent legislation that my opponent passed, that 20% of the new school budget is going to be shouldered by Norwalk residents, and that we are going to lose priority to the regional school that he wants to plan for Norwalk as a result of this bill that just passed.
Okay, Mr. Duff, on the school equity question, any rebuttal or extension?
Sure. Well, I'm not really sure what to say because a lot of that was just totally false. I'm not in favor of, I'll just say on the side, I'm not in favor of vouchers at all. I think that's a terrible idea to use taxpayer money for vouchers, one. Two, the 80% reimbursement for the new Norwalk High School is much higher than the typical 32.5% reimbursement. It is not forced regionalization. It is treated like a magnet school, like we have the Center for Global Studies, like we have AITE, like we have Rogers and Stanford and other places. So to somehow say those things are just complete falsehoods.
That's time, I'm afraid. Ms. Casides.
Yes, I didn't say that my opponent was in favor of vouchers. I said he was for forced regionalization. I actually think we should have vouchers. That's my position. As far as the burden to shoulder, 20% is still a large amount of money when we're talking about over $180 million for the construction that we didn't need, and that the Board of Ed actually even, I talked to members that said that there were other projects that were on the list that could have been done. And I think the most important part about this is that Norwalk students are going to, Norwalk families are going to shoulder the burden of that 20% cost, but we'll lose our priority standing according to lines 72 through 79 in bill number 7010.
Sorry, time on that because it's a short rebuttal.
Okay.
The next question goes to Ms. Casides first. Should the legislature amend the Affordable Housing Law 830G? And if so, how? If not, why not?
So I think in terms of affordability, we need to be looking at more than just housing. Of course, affordable housing is really important. They make sure that we have it and that it's accessible for people, but we need to be looking at the economy as a whole and making sure that we have jobs and that we are creating a climate that is friendly for small businesses so that they can actually grow and expand and that we can have jobs. I think as far as the affordable housing, that should be a decision that's made locally and not by the state. And that's my position.
Okay, Mr. Duff.
Thank you. We actually made some changes to 8-30G a few years ago, but 8-30G still remains an important law through the state of Connecticut because of the fact that we want to make sure that there's affordable housing in all of our communities throughout the state of Connecticut. Darien, under the former First Selectwoman Yvonne Klein, we helped to do a lot of affordable housing in Darien, rehabbed one of the oldest housing projects in the state of Connecticut. And now it's a beautiful place and people love living there. We've done another one in Darien, which was senior housing. That is working very well. But I do think that affordable housing is one of the pillars of our economy and growing our economy in the state of Connecticut. You have to make sure that there's the accessibility of housing for seniors, for students who are just graduating, for working families who are in our state, and it just can't be concentrated in our urban areas. It has to be throughout the entire state of Connecticut. Now, so I do believe that that is an important aspect of what we need to do, and we have worked very, very hard on affordable housing here in the state. For example, in Norwalk, with the new Washington Village, I worked very closely with federal and state and local partners to ensure that that has been rehabbed. And in fact, I predicted that would be a game changer for South Norwalk, and it has been. It's been Soundview Landing, it's called now. It is very successful. So we need to continue to work on affordability for our housing stock, and it is a tremendous part of our recovery and of our future sustainability for our economic competitiveness here in the state of Connecticut.
Okay, any rebuttal or extension, Ms. Casides?
Yes, I just want to say that I do support affordable housing. I think we should have it. My only position that is different from my opponent is that I think that these decisions should be made by the local community and not by the state. There is a move now to make local zoning part of state decisions, and I don't agree with that.
Anything further, Mr. Duff?
No.
Okay, thank you both. Next question will go to Mr. Duff first. Are you in favor of tolls on Connecticut roads? Why or why not? If not, how would you pay for the necessary repairs and modernization?
Well, we certainly know that there is a big transportation crisis in the state of Connecticut. We have over $100 billion worth of needs to fix our state. So for example, locally, we have to make sure that we do our Route 7 Merritt Parkway interchange. We have to make sure we finish up the work on the Merritt Parkway. I'd love to still see Super 7 go through all the way to Danbury. That is a vital economic part of our recovery here in Connecticut. And so there's the Mixmaster in Waterbury, the aqueduct in Hartford, so many projects keeping our trains together. Those are all very, very important issues. The proposal that I had supported was trucks only tolling on our highways. And I thought that was important because of the fact that trucks do most of the damage that we have here in our state, and that having truck tolls would provide the necessary revenue to keep our transportation fund together and ensure that it had adequate amount of money into it to make sure that we were able to do our projects. So, so from a standpoint of trucks only, I would support that, and I have been on record of supporting that. And there are other aspects that we can find additional money to do that as well. I will just say proactively that a lot of people say that we have raided the transportation fund. That is absolutely not true. We've put more general fund money into our transportation fund than ever before, and we've actually done more projects than ever before in transportation. The fact of the matter is that there's just more projects right now than there are funding because of an aging infrastructure.
Okay, same question, Ms. Casides.
Thank you. And it should come as no surprise to anyone, least of all myself, that Bob Duff supports tolls or anything really that has to do with more taxes, because he's voted for increasing our taxes just about every opportunity he's had in his legislative career, including 2 record-breaking years in 2011 and 2015. And more recently in 2019, where he just passed a nearly $2 billion tax hike and did nothing to stop $350 million in raises for state employees, by the way. But when we talk about how to fund anything in this state, it doesn't really matter what we're talking about funding, because Democrats have consistently forced only one option, and that's increasing taxes on Connecticut residents. And Connecticut residents already pay the 2nd highest taxes in the country. As a state leader, my opponent is responsible for, again, some of the greatest tax hikes in our state's history. And again, without doing anything to stem our spending. So bureaucrats in Hartford have a terrible spending habit, and they continue to look to Connecticut residents for a lifeline. And that's what tolls are, just another lifeline for Democrat spending. These bad decisions have to stop so our economy can grow and we can properly fund the important work we have to do without continuing to press our neighbors to their limit. Thank you.
Okay, any rebuttal, Mr. Duff?
Yeah, actually, I'm not reading my answer, so I forgot one point that I actually had advocated to get rid of the car tax, and that I thought that was an important component of ensuring when we got rid of the tolls, that we, if we ever did do tolls, truck tolls, that we would get rid of the car tax, because I find that that is an unequal tax amongst our communities. Norwalk has a much higher car tax than Darien or Greenwich. Waterbury is worse, and Bridgeport is worse than the surrounding suburbs. So getting rid of the car tax to me is extremely important.
Okay, anything further on this, Ms. Casides?
Yes, I love that my opponent just said unequal car tax, and he's trying to take a jab at me because I'm not a 20-year career politician, and I do have my notes here because this, that's what I need to do. So I'm just going to refer to them actually right now to a place where it says that there's a 0.5% increase that just passed because of the Family Medical Leave Act. But guess what about unfair taxing? That 0.5% applies to every Connecticut resident except for unionized state employees. So we're talking about fair taxing. Let's be comprehensive. And I have it actually highlighted in my notes that I'm not ashamed to show people, that I will continue using. Thank you.
I'm afraid, on this question. Next question goes to Ms. Casides first.
Yes.
39 states allow either for multi-day in-person voting and or no excuse voting by mail to encourage participation in our democracy. here in Connecticut that would require a change in the state constitution. Would you favor early in-person voting or wider availability of absentee ballots?
I absolutely do favor wider availability of absentee ballots. I will tell you, one of the things that I've thoroughly enjoyed on this campaign lately, since the ballots went out, is going to doors and people saying that they've already voted for me. It's such an exciting feeling, especially as a first-time candidate, to hear those words. And so I absolutely do support absentee ballot voting, as long as the ballot is solicited. Then that's fine. And no excuse absentee, I think, is a great idea, especially now during COVID times. I do not, however, support early voting because it's expensive. And if we expand the absentee to no excuse, I don't really see a reason why we need to spend more money for early voting. And plus, it takes away some of the magic of Election Day.
Okay, Mr. Duff, same question.
Thank you. I think through this election, we've seen that people really do appreciate the fact of having the no excuse absentee ballot voting. That was an issue put forward by Senate Democrats this year, and it was passed on a bipartisan basis, but we were the ones who put it through in our 2 special sessions that we had. Unfortunately, we have a state constitutional issue to do this just through statute, so we have to do it. We have to put that test to the voters. We actually passed in the State House and the State Senate the resolution to change the Constitution. The House passed it by the necessary 3/5, but the State Senate did not because of Republican opposition to the bill or to the resolution. So unfortunately, we're going to have to bring the issue again. So it won't go to voters until 2022, and it probably won't go in. And if they pass it, it won't go into effect until 2024, which is ridiculous thinking about the fact of where we are right now. With COVID and how people now enjoy being able to vote by mail. It is safe, it is secure, and we're seeing record number of people vote this way. I do support early voting. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be where you have all the schools open for early voting. You can do it simply at City Hall. You can pick the community room a week beforehand, 2 weeks beforehand, and do it that way. There's a number of different ways to kind of skin the cat on that. But the more that we can actually expand voting rights and opportunities, the better off we are. And in Connecticut, we've seen that where we've done same-day registration. We have done, you can register to vote at the DMV. We've done all these kinds of things amid a lot of Republican opposition, but we've continued to expand voting rights. In other states around the nation, we've seen more and more suppression of the vote, unfortunately, which only hurts our democracy.
Anything further on this, Ms. Cedis?
Yes, just that I do support solicited absentee ballots. But of course, my opponent says it doesn't have to be expensive. What does he care? He's just going to raise your taxes again to pay for it. So that's it. Thank you.
Anything further, Mr. Duff?
No.
Okay. Once again, we are at a situation where if I ask a question that has 2 minutes plus rebuttals, we're never going to get to closing statements. So I'm going to do the thing I did last time. Each candidate will get 1 minute, no rebuttals, to answer this, and then we will go to closing statements. And the next question will go to Mr. Duff first. We saw Black Lives Matter demonstrations in many cities and towns in Connecticut this summer. How are you planning to address the issues illuminated by these protests? And if there's time, how do you plan to ensure the voices of underrepresented groups be heard in the legislature?
Well, I think that's a great question and very topical right now. And I think that what we saw in communities all across the state of Connecticut, not just in our urban areas, we saw people, black, white, brown, all different persuasions who came out and supported Black Lives Matter. They saw what happened to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and others around our nation and said enough is enough. We have to make sure that people are treated equally and they're treated fairly and respect, and everybody is treated equally under the law. I think the first step of that was to pass our police accountability bill. Senate Democrats came out with a Juneteenth agenda, which talks about a number of different issues that I think we plan on looking at next January in our regular session. But these types of things are not just a one-off type. You pass the bill and you walk away. These are conversations to be had, listening to be had, and continuing to work with all of our communities to make sure everybody's being listened to, everybody's being treated fairly, equally, and everybody has opportunity.
Thank you. And the same 1 minute to Ms. Kusidis.
So I'm going to address the police bill in my closing remarks, but for now I'm going to talk about racial justice as far as in education. But unfortunately, we do live in a world where racial disparities still exist, and a key difference between myself and my opponent is that I don't see the state as the ultimate problem solver for all of our problems. Right now in Connecticut, with regard to education, families with the means are forming academic and enrichment pods that are functioning a full 5 days a week, so their children are getting exactly what they need. I firmly believe that we're capable of making decisions for ourselves, and I want to see parents empowered to make educational choices for their families, regardless of their means. I think this will break barriers for racial justice because, as I said before, education is the single greatest indicator of someone's life outcomes, and the decisions should be more in the hands of the parents. You can't talk about dismantling systems of oppression when you're enabling and empowering those systems. Education is being disrupted and children must come first. I will work hard to empower parents to make decisions for their children. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's time on that question. We now go to closings by luck of the draw. Ms. Kusidis, first close.
So first of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event this evening, and a big thank you to everybody watching. I'm grateful for this opportunity. As you know, I'm running for state senator of the 25th district, and this is my first time in office. I chose to run at this time in my life because it's time for a change in Connecticut. Our taxes are increasing exponentially. Policy recommendations to take over local control of education and zoning and safety of the safety of our communities is under fire. I'm tired of watching this happen. We need someone in Hartford that knows how to listen and how to find common ground. My opponent has proven that he doesn't care to do either. He's voted with his party 100% of the time and is a proven partisan. We need unity, and we can only achieve that with leaders that listen. I strongly value transparency in everything that I do, and I pledge to my constituents that I will remain transparent. As your state senator, I will be honest and forthcoming and include you in all of my decisions. Let's see, sorry, I lost my place. Well, sorry, I'm done.
All right, thank you. Mr. Duff, closing statement.
Thank you. And again, thanks to the League for hosting us tonight. I would just say to the voters of Norwalk and Darien, if you believe in your heart that I've served you well, I humbly seek your support for re-election. As you know, public service is my passion, and I love what I do. I love representing the people of Norwalk and Darien. It's not just about the bills I pass up in Hartford, such as raising the minimum wage, passing paid family medical leave that will help people, especially during this COVID crisis. It's also about bringing funding back to Norwalk and Darien for projects such as the new Norwalk High School, funding for our parks like in South Norwalk, or other projects that are very, very important to our community. Oxford School, Jefferson School, all those kinds of things that are extremely important for everyone. But it's also about helping constituents. I've literally helped thousands and thousands of constituents over the years, whether it's fighting a state agency or a city agency, whether it's fighting for consumer protection, whether it is ensuring that I'm helping to get their lights back on or their cable service or Wi-Fi back on, is all those kinds of things that help to ensure that you know that I'm there, that you know I'm available, happy to assist, and I'm approachable. You see my lawn signs around. It has my personal email address. It has my home phone number on it. So I am extremely accessible and always have been and always will continue to be. So again, if you believe in your heart that I've served you well, I humbly seek your support. It is an honor and privilege to serve the people of Norwalk and Darien, and I thank you for this opportunity to do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I want to thank both candidates for Senate District 25 and indeed all of the candidates who appeared here tonight. Thank you very, very much. Voters, it's up to you, November 3. Laura?
Thank you, Jean. You stole my thunder. Thank you, Jean, for moderating tonight. Really appreciate it. Special thanks to Mary Oster for organizing this event and Barbara McCabe for their excellent timing skills. And especially thank you for all the candidates for participating tonight. It's a long Zoom, 2.5 hours. So I'm glad that you all did it. But most of all, follow us on Facebook. The League would love to have you. We're always looking for new members, and we hope that you will go out and vote. Don't forget to vote. Thanks so much, everyone.